Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we'll be covering 7 basic functions and formulas that you can use in Google Sheets as well as Microsoft Excel. These functions are sum, SUMIF, SUMIFS, count, COUNTIF, COUNTIFS and SUBTOTAL. Now let's understand what these functions are and how we can use them. Let's look at the sum function now. The sum function helps you add values. You can add individual values, cell references or ranges or a mix of all three. This basically is a add function that you usually use while calculating. The subtotal function returns a subtotal in a list of database. Once the subtotal list is created, you can modify it by editing the subtotal function. As we go ahead, I will show you examples of how we can use this. Now let's look at what the SUMIF function is. You can use the SUMIF function to sum the values in a range that meet a certain criteria that you specify. As the syntax shown out here is SUMIF, you give the range, you give the criteria and the sum range. What is SUMIFS? SUMIFS function adds all of its arguments that meet multiple criteria. So the difference between SUMIF and SUMIF is here you give a single criteria, here you give multiple criteria. Now let's look at count. What exactly does the count function do? The count function counts the number of cells that contain numbers and counts numbers within the list of the arguments. You can use the count function only with numeric values. What exactly does the COUNTIF function do? You can use COUNTIF to count the number of cells that meet a certain criteria. And as earlier, the same way as we saw SUMIFS, the COUNTIFS function applies multiple criteria in the range that you want to count. Now let's see how we can use this in real life examples. Now here we have a list of transactions that have been done on these credit cards of different banks for different activities across the month of September 2021. As you see, this is the list of 18 entries, 18 transactions done on multiple cards for multiple products that have been bought or services that have been acquired. The very first thing that we will be doing is let's look at the sum function out here. So as it's said over here, the sum function adds values and the formula it shows as sum, the range, and it adds values in the entire range. So we will be doing the same thing out here. We want to find the total amount. So out here, we will give the formula as equal to sum, open bracket, that is open parentheses. We will scroll up and we will select the cell from where we want to start the calculation. So we will take this cell as E2, click here, and then we have to give a range till where this is going to go on. As you see, it is automatically selected that it is still E19, but still we will manually go and check it. So this is the cell that is E19. So that is correct. I will say E19 and here we have got the total. Now there is something called the subtotal. What does the subtotal do? Returns a subtotal in the list of database. We'll use this formula subtotal function. The function number is basically for what sort of activity you want to do, whether you want to do a calculation, you want to add, you want to find an average, you want to count the number of values that are there in this range. So we will use the formula out here, and then when we actually run different criteria and scenarios, I will actually show you how this subtotal is going to help us. So for now, we will just use the formula, that is subtotal. Now we need to put the function code. The function code for subtotal sum is 9. And then as earlier, we have to give the range. So the range out here is going to be from E2 to E19. So E2 colon E19. We do that. Now if you see the sum and the subtotal sum, both the values, the answers that we are getting are the same. But as we proceed, we will see how this is different and how it is going to help us. Now let's look at subtotal count. Even this is going to help us as we proceed further. So the formula out here is again the same. Subtotal, open parenthesis. Now here the formula code is going to be used out here. What activity we want to do. Earlier we wanted to do sum, so we added 9. Now we want to find out the count. So we will give the total as 2. The value was 2 out there. And then again we will give the same range. Now since count is being used, we will have to give a numeric value. We cannot give an alphanumeric value out here or a string value. So what we will be doing is we will be taking values from the column A. So we will say A2 to A19. Once we do that, it is going to give us the total as 18. So there are 18 entries. It is showing us as 18 out here. Now this is simple function, simple arithmetic that you could have done using a calculator as well. Now let's go and look at certain different extended formulas that will help us figure out how we can analyze this data that we have out over here. Now let's look at the SUMIF function. The task given to us is what is the total transaction amount charged on each of the banks. As you see, there are certain banks which are charged different transaction amounts. Now if we have to do it using a formula, the formula will be SUMIF. So let's look at this formula. So the formula is SUMIF, open parentheses, and then out here first we have to look at transactions for HSBC Bank. So first we need to select the range where the bank details are mentioned. So the bank details are mentioned in the range of C. So what we'll be doing is we will say start from C2 and then we could do C19. Now when we do this, anything that happens, any calculations that have to take place will happen from this range only. But what if there are multiple additionals that are done to this range later on? So in that case, to keep it open, what we will do is we will not mention the cell value, we will only mention the column value. So we will say from C2 to C, then we go to the criteria that we have to focus on, and that which we are looking out here is that is HSBC. So we'll open the quotes and say HSBC, close, and then now what is the activity that we want to do? We need to find the sum. So the sum is actually the sum of the amount that we need. So we will give the range for the sum out here. So the range for the sum is going to be E2 colon E19. Now ideally we should be taking it as only E because we've taken it as C out here. But since there are certain other values mentioned out here, there will be a confusion in the formula which is being uh, written. So let's see what is the error that we are getting if we do that. If we do this, we will get an error. Now here it is saying suggested fill is this much. So now what exactly is happening is we have taken this values and it is going to overflow. So we are not going to use it here. We will be using it only as E19. Now once we have added the value here automatically it is saying confirm using the filter whether this answer is correct or not. So we will do that later. First, let's write down the values to figure out the transaction details for StanChart, Amex, ICICI and Citibank. Now an easier way for this is drag and drop. But if you see out here, there are certain criteria which are not matching and the values are changing. But these are incorrect formulas if you see. If you see here, it says C2 to C and then E2 to E19 and the value taken out here is HSBC. But if you look here, it says C3 and it's again started with E3 and here the value is going to E20. So one, we need to put a block on this. Second, we need to keep changing this value. That is the bank name. So if you look out here, if you see here, if you select, it is selecting the range from here, that is the second row. But if you look here and if you check, it is selecting the range from the third row. If you see here, it is selecting the range from fourth row, which is incorrect. So whenever we have to drag a certain formula wherein we need to freeze on the certain rows or columns, the formula that we need to use is we need to add the dollar sign. So what we will do is in the first formula again, before that we will delete these formulas so that there is no confusion. We will come here again and we will say $C $2. So it is going to freeze it over there. Then we say $E $2. It is going to make it as a fixed value. Now since this is a complete range that we're looking at, we need not put a dollar sign over here. Out here again, we need to do the same thing. Now once we have done that, click here and it has selected the values out here. That is from the second row till the 19th row here and the entire range over here. Let's see what happens now when we drag now. Now if we come to this one, if we click here, again it is taken till the second row, starting from the second row itself. If we come here and if we check, again it has started from the second row itself. So now, and here it is stopping at 19. So now, since we have put dollar sign, the range that we have specified is correct and we can drag and drop. Now the only thing that we need to change in all these, let's check for this as well before we continue further. If you look out here, so now the range is fixed. Now the only thing that has to change out here is that here the criteria taken was HSBC. For HSBC, here we need to take the criteria as StanChart. So we need to tell it what string it has to search for. What is the condition that we're searching for? So here we will update it as stanc. Now you see the value is changing. Now this is for Amex. So we will change this value out here too. If you have any questions or any doubts, please feel to leave your queries in the comments and I will answer them. Here again, we will take it for ICICI. And finally, the last one is going to be for Citibank. Now we have already set this formula and we have figured out. So now what this formula says is that from the entire list, HSBC transactions that have been done for so much amount. Stanchart has done for so much amount. Amex has been charged for so much amount. ICICI has been charged for this much, and Citi has been charged for this much. Now here we will confirm. How do we confirm whether this is correct or not? There are two ways to do it. Let's do. One is by calculation that we've done. The other one is we can use filters. Now how do we use filters is we'll select the first row, go here and say create a new filter. Now that the filter is created, all we need to do is we need to check for HSBC. Now before we do that, I would want to again bring your attention to this. We had checked the sum is this and the subtotal sum is this. Right now it is taking the entire range, so that is why the sum and the subtotal sum is the same. Now what we'll be doing is we'll try to figure out what is the transaction amount for HSBC. For that we click over here, we will clear out here, and from this list we will say only HSBC and click on OK. Now once we do that, it is saying that the value is correct. Now the reason why it is not showing out here is I'll tell you why. We will clear it again, say select all, come back and say OK. It has taken the range till here. So what we will do is we will remove the filter. We will say none. We will select the values for which we want to create a filter, till where, and then we will say create a new filter. So now the filter has been created for only this much value that we need to run our query on. Now you see the values are same. We come here, we will say clear, select HSBC. The value out here is 34018. Say OK. And now you see the subtotal amount. So now what this subtotal does is when you set a filter, whatever is selected, it does the total of only those values, similar to the formula that we have run. So either you can find this value by running a filter, or you can do it by writing a formula as we wrote with the SUMIF function. So now it says that this value is correct. Let's check for other banks as well. So let's say for we have done HSBC, let's do for Amex. Amex subtotal is again same. You see this value and this value are same, and it says correct over here. Let's do the same thing for Citibank. This value and this value is same, so that this shows that our formula is correct. Let's do it for ICICI as well. Again it says this value and this value is correct. So now you understand that the importance of subtotal for the sum value, which has the function 9 out here. Along with this, if you have been concentrating on this, you see ICICI has only 3 transactions. So even this count has changed. Let's have a look at the other one which we have not yet checked, that is stan C. Again stan C, this value subtotal is correct, the transaction amount is correct, and the subtotal count is 3. Let's have a look at HSBC and see what is the subtotal count now. Now HSBC shows the subtotal count of 4. So again the subtotal, we have taken the function. If you see, instead of 9 we took 2. So it is now only counting the number of rows where this entries are showing up. So this is how the subtotal function works. This is how the SUMIF function works, and this is how the filter works. So let's clear all the filters now and come back to the same criteria again. Let's remove the filter. Okay. Now let's move on to the next function, that is SUMIFS. Now what does SUMIF say? It says SUMIF function adds all its arguments that meet multiple criteria. And this is the syntax for it. So let's see an example for that. Here the SUMIF function, it's asking us to find the total amount charged on Amex towards loan payment. So now here there are going to be two criteria that we need to work on. One criteria is that the card has to be Amex, and second has to be towards what it is. So let's start off with the SUMIF functions now. So we will say SUMIFs, and now we will need to give the range for the total amount that we are looking at. It says that find the total amount. So the total amount, the range is going to be from E2 to E19, then we put a comma, and then what is the first criteria that we're looking at? The first criteria that we're looking at is that it has to be which bank. The bank is in which column? It is in column C. So we will say C2 to C. We are using the complete criteria for this because there is nothing below it. And now we need to give the condition. The condition is, what is the condition? We need details from what? We need details for Amex. And then we give the second criteria that we're looking at. The second criteria is in the details column, and that is the column D. So we will say from D to D19, and then we will give the condition as loan repayment is what we are looking at. Loan repayment. So this is how we write the SUMIF function. Now here it is giving us an error. Let's see what the error is. Let's figure out what exactly are we looking at. Let's close this as well and see. Okay, so we need to give the same range when we're giving the formulas. If we're keeping the row range open, then we need to keep it open for all the fields that are there in the same string when you're using the SUMIF functions. So now this is the amount transaction charged on Amex towards loan repayment, and it says confirm using filters. So now we will do the same thing again. Right now if you see, the subtotal again has become the same as the sum because there is no filter set on this data out here. So let's set data till here and set a filter. Now the first criteria that we need to look at is we need to look for Amex. So from under banks, we will just select Amex and then say OK. Now if you still see, the amount charge is still saying confirm using filter. So that is why it is not yet confirmed, because the second criteria that we had was for loan repayment. Now Amex has been charged for doing 2 loan repayments, one for paying rent and one to buy a television. So the second criteria for us was loan repayment. So we go here and we select the criteria as loan repayment and then we say OK. Now if you see, the subtotal value out here and the amount charged out here is the same, and then it says that the value is correct. So that means that our formula that we have used is correct, which has been confirmed using the filter as well. Let's remove the filter now and let's move on to the next function. Out here also we will need to clear all and say OK. So now again the values are same, the sum and the subtotal are same. That means all the filters are removed. So these two formulas that we have done are correct. Now let's move to the next one, which is the count. What does the count function say? The count function counts the number of cells that contain numbers and counts numbers within the list of the arguments. So it will basically give you the number of times that an argument is seen, a number of times the entries have been done. For this, the, the, the formula for the count is very simple. The query out here given to us is calculate the total number of transactions and entries. Now out here we can see it very easily that it is 18 transactions. But if we would have had in multiples, thousands and lakhs, scrolling down would have been a very tedious task. So for that, the formula is equal to count, and then we need to take a numeric value. So we will go count from here till where we want to go, till here, A19. So we will say till cell number A19. And now if you see, it shows the transaction as 18 because there are 18 entries and even the subtotal count is matching. Now let's look at the COUNTIF function. How many HSBC transaction entries in this list? Now we only want to see the transaction entries. Here it was the total of HSBC transaction amount. Here we only need to see how many transaction entries are there. So how many times the HSBC card has been used and it has been swiped. So let's see what is the function for that. The syntax for it is COUNTIF, where do you want to look and what do you want to look for. So basically it is COUNTIF, give the range and give the criteria. So we will do that out here. We will say COUNTIF. What are we focusing on? We are focusing on the bank out here. So the bank column is C. So we will say from C to colon C. And what is the criteria that we're looking at? We are looking at HSBC. HSBC, and we close the parentheses. And here it says the answer is 4. It says that in this entire list there are 4 transactions for HSBC which have been done. Now how do we verify that? We will have to verify using the filters and to see whether the HSBC transaction count which we have got using the formula is matching the subtotal count out here or not. And if it matches, here it will say correct. So let's again enable the filter for this data. And now what we need to do is we need to look for transactions for HSBC. We'll select bank, clear all, just select HSBC, and say OK. And now it shows that there are 4 entries. So here it says it is correct, because the HSBC transactions that we have looked for, we have counted for, is the value is 4, and the subtotal count out here is again showing as 4. So that means this formula is correct that we've used. Now let's move on to the last formula out here in this video. Before that, what we can do is we will select all and we will keep the filter active. Now it says that how many HSBC transactions done before a particular date. So now if you see, HSBC transactions have been done on the 2nd, HSBC transactions have been done on the 17th, SNBC transactions have been done on 25th, and HSBC transaction has been done on the 3rd. Now we need to figure out transactions that have been done before 20th. So what is the COUNTIF function that we are going to use is, we will be using the COUNTIFS function now. COUNTIFS, and then the very first criteria is that we need to figure out the bank. So for that we will need to give the range C2, C19, figure out the, give the condition, that is HSBC, and then we need to give the criteria for the date. Now the date is in the B column, so we give the range for that as well. So B2 to B19, and then what is the criteria? The criteria is before, so that means the date has to be smaller than, so it has to be lesser than 20th September 2021. We close this, close the brackets, and we close the parentheses. And now it is saying, it is giving the answer as 3. So now we will confirm this again using this filter to check if our answer is correct. So the very first criteria that we need to search for is HSBC. We need to look out for HSBC transactions. We say HSBC here, click on OK. Now it still shows 3 out here, and here it is showing as 4. Why? Because it is showing all the transactions. Now if we want to use this filter to figure out a date which is before 20th, we'll go to the filter again for the date, and we will give filter condition. The filter condition out here is date is before. It says before 20th, so we say date is before, and then we say give the exact date out here. So the exact date out here is 20th September 2021, and then we say OK. Once we see that, update, run the filter, you see that the last entry which was there has gone, and now the subtotal count is matching the count that we got using the formula of COUNTIFs. So this is how you can use these formulas. If you have any questions, if you have any doubts, feel free to leave your messages in the comments and I will answer them. If you've liked this video and if you want to know any other thing, if you want me to create a video for any other functions or formulas that you want to understand, leave your messages in the comment and I will create that next video. Please ensure to like, subscribe and share this video. And after you subscribe, please press the bell icon so that anytime I come up with a new video, you get a notification immediately. Thank you for watching this video. Goodbye.